All right, if it's Tuesday, it can mean only one thing. Mike, it is time for Comic Book School Live. Are you ready?
I am ready for Comic Book School Live, as are some of our fans.
Yeah. So, Mike, we got it looking for Comic-Con. Is this a new person, Mike?
This is a new person, and we have another new person, Kink Educator.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome. Welcome to our new viewers and our classic viewers. We love you all dearly, and thank you for joining us. Victor, welcome back. Welcome back.
Hi, Victor.
Nice to see you again. So, Mike, we got a controversial show tonight. It's known.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson. So it's Rob Anderson. So we know Rob. So, and I will give him that is correct. I knew who it was because I asked him to come on.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. There you go. So, Mike, thank you very much, Balfagor. Nice to see you as well. Nice to see you. So, Mike, tonight we're going to be talking about controversial comic book stories, the stories that have outraged fans.
Yes.
Before we do that, what do you think of my shirt?
I think it's very, very neon.
Yeah, I'm feeling colorful and bright. And you know who's colorful and bright? Our good friend, Darren Sanchez. Darren, welcome.
Hey, guys.
Welcome to the show. So
maybe colorful. I wouldn't say bright, but thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was a bit of a slap down. Okay. So if Darren suddenly up there, we lost him again.
What happened?
He's back now. I am wearing the green screen. That's right. So tonight, guys, we're going to be talking about controversial comics. Before you get started, if you're new to the show, that's not it. That's not it. Hold on.
Gotta go back.
I messed up my slides. Something happened.
Oh boy.
Fire the producer.
You're showing the behind the scenes stuff, bud.
Oh boy. All right. Just so you guys who are brand new to the show, my co-host is Mike Fasolo, three-time and two-time Emmy Award winning and two-time Annie Award winning, coming from Wizard all the way from California, Robot Chicken. Mike Fasolo, thanks for coming again to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's right.
I appreciate you keeping me on as your co-host.
Until I find somebody better. Okay, my name is Buddy Scalera, and I am a comic book writer, also from Wizard, and I may have written some of your favorite comics. I may not have, doesn't really matter, but I am the co-creator or the founder of Comic Book School, and that's where we are tonight, talking about the craft and business making comics. And, of course, please welcome my good friend, Darren Sanchez.
Thank you.
Dialing all the way in from New York, not New York City, but from New York State. Darren, well known to the audience of the show, also a Wizard guy, but you came to Wizard via Valiant, then you went over to Marvel. You are now the founder of After Hours Productions. You've done all kinds of wild stuff, including writing your own comic books and doing a lot of custom comic publishing. We're going to get into that in a future episode. Please, though, welcome Darren Sanchez.
Thank you.
Now, the reason we tell you about Darren's background, Mike, is because Darren is something of an expert. He's been in comics like us for an extremely long time, probably almost 30 years, right, Darren?
Yeah, almost my entire life, all 30 years.
Well played. But tonight, guys, we're going to be talking about controversial comic book stories, things that set the fandom on fire. We have 3 examples tonight. I'll tell you about those examples, and then we'll ask you why they were controversial and also our audience. So the controversial comic book stories, this is what drives comic book sales, right? You need to write something that will make somebody pick up a book. If you keep writing comics that are the same old, no one's going to buy them. But sometimes you have to shake things up, but sometimes you could shake things up too much. Darren, just real quick, tell us why comic book editors, because you were an editor, why do comic book editors need to shake things up?
Well, I can tell you that there's an old saying in writing that if everyone in the story is just walking around agreeing with each other, then that's a really bad story because there's no conflict. So if you have a character story arc going on and there's nothing controversial or polarizing in any way going on, that you might have some kind of boring story that is in need of a character that injects some kind of fresh take into it. So editors are always looking for something that can make their readers sit up and take notice, especially on a long-running title like Superman or Spider-Man or something like that. So that's why occasionally you'll see storylines they have the best intentions, but they may piss off fans. They may piss off fellow writers who spent months and months and months building some kind of continuity, only to have the next writer come in and just rip it to shreds or retcon it or something, So yeah, there controversy. Sometimes it sells books, and sometimes it's bad. So I guess we're here to talk about that.
And Mike, it's a good thing I didn't ask him to give me the long version of the answer.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
Nice to see you, Redheaded Ed. We're glad that your internet connection holds out long enough for you to watch us here talk about controversial comic book stories. Now, Mike, you are, even though I am wearing the greenest color, you are the greenest to these comic book stories. So while Darren and I were more familiar with the topics, you will be newer, so we're interested in your take. So we're going to go through 3 topics. But first, before we go any further, as Darren said, sometimes you have to have a crazy idea to shake things up. There are times when crazy ideas work. Darren, real quick, because you know the history of all of these from left to right. What are we looking at here? The Incredible Hulk does what?
Well, the Incredible Hulk, it looks like you have the Gray Hulk up there. So that's probably when the Gray Hulk became green. And to me, that was just a production thing and not really that big of a story. But it is kind of a retcon, so that does count. In the middle is Winter Soldier, when the Marvel editors decided to bring Bucky, who died in World War II, to bring him back to life with that mysterious backstory that everybody saw in Captain America, Winter Soldier. Mm-hmm. And that's one example of it really working. Mm-hmm. And then Superman, there was a time in the early Superman days when he got to be so strong, so powerful that it was really hard to write. And I mean, like pushing planets around, that sort of thing. And so they depowered him somewhat, and that worked out as well. So those are maybe 3 examples that fans either didn't mind or that they actually really liked. So yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, I think Bucky is the perfect example. They always say in Marvel continuity, the only 2 characters that'll never come back are Bucky and Uncle Ben.
Yes.
So there may be hope that Uncle Ben. Oh, hello from Australia.
We got someone new from Australia.
Yeah.
We're very happy to have our Australian viewers. We're super excited. Thank you. Welcome to the show, Mike. Are you familiar with all of these storylines at all?
Not so much the Superman one, but yes, and the Hulk one, like Darren said, I think that was just like the going from gray to green.
Well, no, Incredible Hulk in the very beginning, the first couple issues was gray. Then a printer error made him green, and then for the next 40 or 50 years, he was green. At which point, Peter David was trying to do something to shake up the character, and went back to gray, and then the Hulk was gray for a couple of years.
Was that Joe Fixit? Was that?
Yes. Yeah, he was the mob guy. Yeah.
He became smart. He became this. Peter David was famous because he wrote the character for over 7 years, so he was always changing things up. Mike, you're obviously familiar with Winter Soldier. Were you familiar with Winter Soldier from the movies or from the comics?
Just from the movies. But I like that storyline is a great way to bring back, a character who was, supposed to stay dead. Because Bucky was one of the only ones who never, there was no way to bring him back in a good way. And then they did. It was a great way to bring.
Wait till you find out that the Winter Soldier is actually a clone of Bucky, and that Bucky really did die. So that's coming.
Yeah, that'll be the next retcon.
Coming up soon, the Spring Soldier. He's very upbeat and happy. Oh, Andrew Campbell, all the way in. Nice to see you, Andrew. Welcome to the show. Uncle Ben would make a mean robot. You're right.
Yep.
Right there. That would actually be a pretty good storyline, right? Where his brain is in a jar. It sounds like a Futurama episode. Okay. So controversy number 1 in Amazing Spider-Man, they had a long run where the Jackal was cloning. The Jackal was one of Peter's professors somehow cloned Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. At some point in battle, Spider-Man versus Spider-Man, one Spider-Man kills another Spider-Man, and in issue 151, Spider-Man throws the dead clone into this here smokestack. I don't know why no one else is disturbed by the fact of Spider-Man just basically destroying a body. Like, we never talk about Spider-Man's like, oh, this is inconvenient. Let me throw the body into a furnace.
Well, it's his body. He can do whatever he wants with it.
It wasn't his body. It was.
It's like the movie The Island, where the clones really have no soul. So it doesn't matter, right?
That's true.
Hey, Jared, how are you? Also from Down Under. Nice to see you. Welcome. But, I thought it was his evil twin. Andrew, nice to see you in the show as well. No, not the evil twin. He was literally a clone from Spider-Man's cells. So
Yes.
What happens, right? We get this clone, years go by. This is part of this storyline where you see in 121, this is the famous death of Gwen Stacy. In 144, this is the first return of a clone.
Right.
So the Jackal originally did this because he fell in love with Gwen Stacy. It was like a done in one, right, Darren? 141, Spider-Man, Peter Parker realizes that Gwen Stacy had a clone and she's alive.
Right. Professor Warren cloned both of them, actually. So that's where that came from.
And what happens? It's a good story. It's done in one. At some point, I guess in the 90s, and I don't think you were working there, Darren. I think you were still working at Wizard. They decide to go on the Clone Saga, which is just absolutely bonkers. And it starts off with a solid idea, which was maybe the clone was still alive and there's more clones and clones start popping up, so on and so forth. But there is a massive inflection point where at this 226 and then 118, as you can see, is the appearance of Ben Reilly. And Darren, could you just explain for a moment what the controversy is? Well, don't tell me about the controversy. Just tell me who Ben Reilly actually is.
Okay, I'll try and tell you without the controversy, but that'll be tough. Ben Reilly, it's kind of retconned in a way that that the action that when Spider-Man threw that clone into the chimney or into the furnace or whatever, that what they're trying to say is that wasn't Peter throwing in the clone, that was the clone throwing in Peter, and so the idea is that Peter Parker is not the real Spider-Man, and so when Ben shows up, he's claiming that he is the real Spider-Man, and so that's kind of what started to throw everybody. And it sounds to me like it's something. I wasn't there, but it sounds to me like something that maybe the marketing department said, we need an event. We had the death of Superman. It sold millions of copies. Then Bane broke Batman's back, and that sold a bunch of copies. So we need to do something with Spider-Man. And so at the time, Marvel's editor-in-chief position was kind of in flux. I think it was Tom DeFalco at the time. And so they came up with this idea. And during that storyline, Tom DeFalco left, or I don't know if he was fired or left or whatever, but they split up the editor-in-chief position into 5 different people, and each had different responsibilities, and there was no one visionary in charge of this storyline. So it was a little bit like the new Star Wars trilogy. You had just people all over the place trying to figure out where to take it, and it became a bit of a convoluted mess. And
But now the controversy is that Marvel contends that the clone was the one that threw the original Spider-Man into the furnace. Hence, the adventures that we have been reading since Amazing Spider-Man 120, whatever, are fake. We're not really reading about Peter Parker. We're reading about a cheap imitation. Now,
Right.
what difference does it make? They were still Spider-Man's adventures. So, Mike Fasolo, what exactly is the controversy, and what outraged fans so much when there was this idea that it was the clone that lived and not the original Peter Parker?
Because you're taking away everything about Peter Parker that we knew. It's like, you know how he grew up, you knew his whole life before that, and then suddenly, no, it's not really him. And that's what I think really made everyone so angry, because the character that you knew and loved wasn't the character that you knew and loved. He was just some clone. And the real Peter Parker was, wherever the clone went after he got thrown into the furnace, that was the real Peter Parker wandering around somewhere.
And why would that bother you? It was literally the same guy.
But it's, you care about that character, and to suddenly find out, oh no, he's not real. He was just a clone. He's not the guy you thought he was.
But did that negate your warm memories of him?
It did, because when you're suddenly thrown into that world that they created of, this isn't the guy that you knew. Why do you care?
It didn't bother you at all that Peter Parker, perhaps the real Spider-Man, threw a dude into a furnace to burn the body?
No, not at all. No.
Okay. Darren, so you've been an editor and a writer. No editor sets out to write a story that doesn't work, right? Like, so what happens? How do stories like this, that ostensibly some would argue didn't really work, what happens here?
I think it did work on some levels, but when you're getting direction from different bosses telling you where to take a story, sometimes things can go wrong. And they split the 4 Spider-Man titles. 2 of them were Ben Reilly and 2 of them were Peter Parker. And I don't think they themselves knew what to do. And that became kind of evident. They even retconned their retcon. But
all right, wait, what's retcon, Darren? Make sure everybody knows what's retconning.
It's man, I'm drawing a blank, but I know it's when they change continuity.
Retroactive continuity.
Retroactively changing continuity to fit a plot or that they want to write now. They change something that happened in the past.
That's like if we were to retcon that I wasn't really Mike Fasolo's father.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And suddenly you find out I'm not your dad, Mike.
See, that would be weird.
I was a clone of your dad.
Like if Tony Stark found out he was adopted and he wasn't actually the son of Howard Stark, which I think actually they did. But those kind of things piss off fans, because it takes things that they knew and suddenly it devalues them, and it kind of makes them feel like the editors don't
They
care.
were tricked, right? They were tricked.
Yes.
Yeah, the editors don't care about the continuity, then why should I? That kind of thing.
So Mike, did you feel, so you felt, how did you feel when you found out about this controversial storyline?
Well, I mean, I read a lot of them, and the Spider Clone stories were just kind of blah. They weren't very fun and interesting. So it was just kind of, well, first of all, is another one of the many Spider-Man titles, which, if there's so many titles, everything just gets bogged down in trying to figure out who they are, what timeline you're in, what they're doing. So it was just something else that they added in that they didn't need to. They should have just kept it as Spider-Man.
Yeah. So I think you make a good point. And as writers and as people who are in the audience who are writers and artists and editors, I think the key thing, replicants and clones are totally different. When everyone's a clone, nobody's a clone. I tell you, our audience is pretty funny. I think the key thing is, as you said it, Darren, it comes down to execution. The execution of Bucky worked. The execution with the Gray Hulk. I mean, at the time when I was reading those, it was already back issues. I didn't read it when they were coming out, but it worked. Like, it was organically satisfying. Oh, read this one out loud.
Yeah, we have a comment about the Gray Hulk.
Yeah, Jared, actually, we know Jared. Jared worked at Marvel. Go ahead, Mike, read it out.
It wasn't a print error that made the Hulk green. It was the fact that K-tones were not allowed in the interior of comics. So gray had to be done with the CMY plates. That led to the variations of gray. I don't know what any of that means.
Darren, do you know what that means?
Yeah, it means that they had to get their dark colors from mixing the other colors because they didn't have black. So if they got the combination wrong, something could turn into a different color. And that's essentially what happened. And Jared and I had many arguments on the football field, by the way. So, but Jared, I agree with you on this one.
And so what was this last part here, Mike?
In the 60s, Batman's gray was done with the color plates on the insides, but with K-tones on the cover. So DC pulled it off.
I got to tell you, thank you, Jared, for... Maybe we should have Jared on the show one day, guys. I think, yeah, Jared, you're going to have to come on the show and join us one night. All right. So we can all agree that...
there's a lot.
Oh, God, there was a point where they even started changing the adjectives and rebooting all of them. That was during Reboot-a-Palooza or something.
I think there was 4 back then. It was Amazing, Spectacular, Web of Spider-Man, and I don't remember the 4th one.
Gucci Gucci Goo, right? Wasn't it Gucci Gucci Goo Spider-Man?
Gucci Goo Spider-Man, yeah. Too many.
The tickled Spider-Man. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off. Okay, so nobody intends to do it. The Clone Saga could have worked.
From what I read, and I did some research, Bud, the Spider Clone Saga was only supposed to be like a 3-month run. It was supposed to introduce Ben Parker. They were supposed to find out that he was the real Spider-Man, and then he was supposed to go off. But it did pretty well in sales when it first came out, and I think it was probably just because everybody was like, "Oh my God, there's something new that I should start collecting."
It was a speculator market back then. People they got it because they thought they were all going to go up in value, and when it turned out that they didn't go up in value because they printed 1 million copies, a lot of people bailed on the Spider-Man titles. And that was part of the reason that Marvel had to start selling titles, and they went bankrupt. It really was a bad time to work at Marvel, and a bad time for Marvel in general. I don't know if it was all because of this story or if there were a lot of other factors, but this hurt the sales of Spider-Man.
Yeah, but the Clone Saga actually sold pretty well, which is why it looks like they kept extending the storylines. They were going to do it as a compact little thing,
right?
Get it in there, get it out, and then everybody's like, "Oh, it's doing really well. Let's just continue it."
It lasted like 1.5 years, right?
Well, when you say everyone, well, I don't think it was the editors. I think it was the marketing department or the Cirque department saying, keep putting out more.
Yeah. And
they're like, but the story's, told. So, but you got to keep putting out more. And when you get mandates like that, it starts to mess with the story. Things like, let's figure out a way. Spider-Man's getting boring. He's old. He's getting married. We need a younger, funnier Spider-Man. So how are we gonna do that? And so suddenly you have Peter Parker move to Portland, Oregon with his wife, Mary Jane, and let Ben Reilly become the Spider-Man. Yeah, exactly. Philip.
So look at Jared dropping some truth again. Let's read this one out.
Yeah, the Life of Riley was a 35-part column on the Spider Clone story written by the blogger and former editor-writer Glenn Greenberg. If you want to read more.
I want to read more, but not 35 blog posts.
No, that's just unless they're only a paragraph. Then
I think like the Clone Saga, I wanted a shorter version.
Yeah.
Like, does Glenn have like a 3 blog
or like a 2-minute YouTube video? Maybe.
Right. Let's do that. All right. So speaking of second chances, we have controversy number 2. One More Day. Who wants to take the lead on describing what exactly One More Day is or was? You raise all your hands at once, fellas. All right, I'll lead off. Okay, so basically, there was quite a lot that was going on at Spider-Man at the time. I believe this was during the time, Darren, after he had unmasked himself and revealed his secret identity. There were a lot of things that were happening, very exciting, and yeah, he is, Philip, a lot of controversy, but we will move on. There was a point where the discussion, I believe, among writers and editors was, should Spider-Man be able to experience extended happiness, and would a marriage represent that extended happiness and the maturation of that character? And did they need to unmarry Spider-Man in some way? Darren, was that more or less the take of what happened? And then we could talk about what exactly happened in the pages.
That could be one angle, but that's not really how I saw it. I feel like people were just upset because it seemed like an obvious mandate to undo the marriage, and so they killed off Aunt May, and then Spider-Man made a pact with Mephisto to bring back Aunt May, but in return, he nullifies the wedding. And he and Mary Jane both agreed to it. And so they go back to not being married, and presto, everything's back to normal. And it just seems like a forced plot that came from upstairs, and somebody had to write it. And so to me, that I don't know. It just, a lot of things felt wrong and out of character and forced. And I mean, some people actually liked the idea of Peter and Mary Jane being married, and other people wanted Spider-Man to be funny again. And I think Joe Quesada was in that camp, that he wanted the wisecracking single young Peter Parker. And so that's what they had to do. And so.
But it's just like in this one, it's just silly how they did it.
Yeah.
Because Aunt May had gotten shot since she was dying. And throughout all the characters in the Marvel universe, no one could heal her. It's like she got shot with, it's not like she had some mystical spell put on her that nobody could break. She was just shot. And there's a million other characters that have the just healing powers. You know, you have Doctor Strange, who can basically do anything. And he's like, no, I can't do that. But so we had to go to Mephisto to get this figured out, which it was the only Mephisto is all about taking people's souls. And he's like, no, I don't want your soul. I want your marriage. Like, come up with a better way to get something like that done.
But then there's the aspect of giving up your wife to save your old aunt. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Plus,
Aunt May is like 95 years old, so she only has a couple more years
left. She could go next week, you know. So
she's been having heart attacks since the 60s. You know, and the specificity of "I want your marriage" just seemed like, even when I read it, I was like, he wants what?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I mean, it should have read, "I'm supposed to say I want your marriage," you know, something like that, because it was just really forced.
All right, so read Burnett's comment here.
A lot of fans are still actively lobbying for this to be retconned. I feel like the happy-go-lucky Peter was never mutually exclusive to married Peter. No, he wasn't.
Agreed. Like, he was still the same character. There was no reason why Peter was not funny and married. I don't know why being married was thought to be not funny, because he was the same person.
Yeah.
A pact with the devil livens up any storyline. It certainly does.
This is good. Glenn has a good point. This could be a lot more fun. Mephisto could be married to Peter or MJ. It's a sitcom in waiting. Yeah.
Okay, so now we do this convoluted storyline, and Darren, you were like, "Oh, this was something that came from above," but I say it came from below because Mephisto was a stand-in for the devil, right? And they got to do something with Doctor Strange, right? There was a whole Doctor Strange angle to it, and I think they kind of touched on some of this stuff in the movies, right? And it was really, at the end of the day, I did read. I thought I read, and I don't want to miscredited, but I thought I did read, Darren, that Joe Quesada did say strongly that he did not believe that Peter Parker should be married as a character, right? We went from him being through high school to college to graduate school all the way through, but there was a feeling that maybe Spider-Man was not as relatable anymore, or Peter Parker was not as relatable anymore as a married character.
Maybe, but that was 90s Joe Quesada. What would today's Joe Quesada say? Because he is married, and maybe he thinks that was a mistake in hindsight. But it seems like if it was Mary Jane who had died, that would make more sense. That Peter would agree to bring her back, but in order to bring her back, he has to nullify the marriage. So she'll wake up, but she won't remember that they're married. That would have made more sense, because the whole Aunt May thing, it's people don't really like Aunt May for some reason, and it's not as relatable. So
I think the problem was, as you said, Mike, Aunt May is anywhere from 90 to 109.
I mean, Marissa Tomei, whatever. She's younger
by now, Darren. It's the number of times you've tried to call her or text her.
She owes me a text. What can I say?
She owes you a text.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, though. They could have come up with just a much better.
What was that? Wait, pull that up real quick. What did Kink Educator say?
Spider-Man getting things erased from memories.
Was he?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
He's probably talking about the movie with Doctor Strange but it wasn't Spider-Man that got his memory erased. It was everyone else, right?
Go ahead, Mike. Read this one out.
Peter is a loser. He should never get the girl. No one would read Charlie Brown if he actually got to kick the football. I would. I'd like to see Charlie Brown kick that football at least once.
One time.
One little bit of trivia was just before he died, Charles M. Schultz said that he regretted that he never let Charlie Brown kick the football at least one time, but he was consistent to the character. So,
oh yes, this was actually something else that I read about this storyline. She wasn't pregnant, but they also had to give up their unborn child or something like that, or maybe
I thought she was pregnant.
Oh, she was pregnant.
When they moved to Portland, Oregon, to let Ben Reilly be Spider-Man. That's a different storyline that we're talking about. So I don't know if she was pregnant in this storyline, but in the first one, the Clone Saga, she was. So
wait, Aunt May was pregnant now.
So Darren, I agree with you with just a small pivot, which it let Charlie Brown kick.
Yeah,
just be mean. Lucy was mean. But so Darren, you are I think correct. There was a slight editorial twist that is Mary Jane dies, but in order to save her life, they have to nullify their relationship. You might be able to do that, and then he has that ongoing longing. I don't remember what happens, but I did some research. And Mike, did you do some research? They never undid this, right?
No, they're still separated.
And her memory is still erased, that she doesn't know that she was in another situation married to Peter Parker, right?
As far as I know, yes. I mean, I don't follow the comics. I mean, it's just
I thought they got married eventually, and
they get married again.
Yeah, there's a whole storyline of them with kids. I haven't read it, but I've seen it. I
thought that was Spider Girl. That was like an alternate universe, right? Mayday Parker.
There's a lot of Spider.
Yeah, that's the problem when there's too many titles. And
there's too many Spider-Men right now and too many lines of continuity.
Yeah.
And they thought it was a great idea to have the multiverse and the Spider-Verse and it's just way out of hand now, and people can't even keep up with what the hell's going on. So that's that could be a whole different show. So
I want your marriage. How does he say it, Mike? Like what, Mike? You do voices. Tell me how 2 ways. One serious way and one funny way that he would say.
I wish I had a voice changer because I would make it nice.
No, you're a voice actor. I
want your marriage.
And then do a funny one.
I want your marriage.
Like a Mickey Mouse.
Guys, we're gonna put on a show.
I want your marriage.
I want your marriage. Everybody, it's me, Mickey Mouse. Bring Goofy along. Darren spitting hard facts.
Yeah.
Darren doesn't spit.
And then there's somebody thought Mary Jane was married to some guy named Paul.
Paul wishes.
Yeah.
And the controversy is Paul dead. Okay, on the main sacred timeline.
The sacred timeline. I guess timeline, whatever, the Earth 616.
Does that qualify as kink? I mean, to be educating us on that? I don't know.
It's educational.
It's educational. All right, guys, let's move on to controversy number 3, and then we'll do our wrap. Controversy number 3. Mike, you want to read what's on the hammer for the audience?
In Mickey Mouse's voice.
In Mickey Mouse's voice.
Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
So in this series, they take this comic from, I guess, let me see, what year was this? You could see it is 1978. They had done a what if Jane Foster had found the hammer of Thor. I don't know if they were specifically looking at this, but then a couple years ago, Jane Foster becomes Thor. And this is not the first time that we have seen direct female versions of Marvel and DC heroes. Most famously, Spider-Woman and She-Hulk, according to comic book historians, were rushed out simply to ensure that the competition was not able to make a character that was resembling those characters. But this goes back as far as 1956, where you had Batman, Robin, and then there was Batgirl, and then Batwoman. I'm sorry, was it Batwoman? Oh, it was Batwoman?
Yeah, that's Batwoman.
And then later, we have Supergirl, who was the cousin. The Marvel family came out pretty soon and early in the career of Shazam, but that became the whole Marvel family. There was one or a couple of issues where the Punisher had, I swear to God, her name was Lady Punisher. So it was not a great name. You got Batwoman. But then there was this surge, this massive surge of taking traditionally male characters, not really in the case of Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel had been a woman for a long time, but turning those characters from male to female. And yet, for whatever reason, there was limited, fans sometimes were grumbling. Some of the fans were grumbling, but for the most part, they kind of worked. But for some reason, there is a lingering controversy about Jane Foster Thor, which eventually became the last Thor movie. Darren, help me out here. Help me understand, what is the controversy that has befallen Jane Thor that didn't necessarily befall some of these other characters that came before Jane Thor?
Well, first I could tell you that this story actually has a lot of heart and was executed fairly well, in my opinion, with the exception of one key thing, and that's that they basically tried to replace Thor and give Jane the name Thor. I feel like the story would have worked better had she just been like Super Jane or something to that effect, like Beta Ray Bill. He got the power of Thor, but he had his own name. He didn't say, "I am Thor." They retconned it so that the name Thor was more of a mantle or a title, like Captain America. Kind of, they did the same thing with that. That it's not a person; it's a title. And when Thor became unworthy, then Jane got the hammer and she became Thor. Instead of getting the powers of Thor, which would have been more accurate, I think, she became the female Thor. And people, I think, were hesitant to say anything about it because of the political climate at the time, because everyone would think, you're a sexist or whatever. But to me, it wasn't about that. It was just about that was his name, not his title. And it just seemed ridiculous that someone would take the name.
It's like we retcon and then there's a female Mike Fasolo.
Right, exactly.
Mike Fasolo is not a title or a mantle.
It's just Mike Fasolo.
It's his name.
But Lady Punisher, that's what I call myself. You can call yourself anything you want, but Lady Punisher is the worst.
It's different. It's the Lady Punisher.
And before I get to you, Mike, I will note, like each of these characters worked for different reasons. The origins of these characters, like this wasn't really Spider-Man. It was a different character. And She-Hulk had a practical reason why the blood transfusion caused her. And then this was an emulating vigilante. And, Batwoman was, I don't even know, but, then later in the more modern age, Deadpool core, you start having these sillier and sillier characters.
Yeah, but Deadpool, people expect silliness. So nobody really cares. It could be a frog. It could be a raccoon. It could be anything. So why not a female Deadpool? Who cares?
Yeah. And I think this is Laura Kinney, which is what Wolverine's daughter, right?
Yeah, she was X-23 or something.
And that's X-23. Yeah.
And then Riri Williams isn't totally. The fact that they made it so close to Iron Man, Ironheart, I think takes away from the character. It's just a super character that's got these amazing abilities and the genius and the wherewithal. Captain Marvel, I don't know. It was just a title, and it was sort of like a military title, and she was Kree, right, Darren? She was a Kree?
Yeah, she got after the Kree Captain Marvel died from the radiation poisoning of the bands or whatever. Yeah. She somehow got the powers. I'm not even sure. But yeah, I don't think people minded that. I think for that particular character, it worked. She had other problems. I think maybe like Superman, we talked earlier, she was overpowered perhaps, and maybe not very fun to read. But that's a whole different kind of thing. But I agree with you with Ironheart. I think she should have separated herself and been more of something that's more her instead of, a pink Iron Man suit with hearts on it. That seems that seems silly to me.
Right. So, and pull that quote back up there, Mike. That was good. Yeah. So Captain Marvel was indeed a male character, and then but it was a military. It was
right. And Carol Danvers existed as Ms. Marvel at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she didn't come out of nowhere, and so it kind of made sense. It's like Bucky, taking over the mantle of Cap would have probably been better than Falcon, So, but
all right. So then over here, you can even look at this one because they were building this character for a while since the early issues of the reboots. Where Kate Bishop is a protege that is learning, happens to have unusual talent, but Clinton Barton hones her as a Hawkeye, and she takes over the mantle of Hawkeye, even matching the colors of the costume. Kind of worked.
But that's a badass cover too. It worked on a lot of levels. And to be fair, people make fun of Hawkeye. So, so if they make fun of Kate Bishop, that's not a big deal, but it actually works, I think. So
read out Burnett's comment there, Mike.
Trying to pass the mantle of a male character seems cheap and nothing except derivative.
Yeah. It could be. And I mean, but and that's the key thing, Philip, it's got to work, right? Like these are examples of it working. And
if you have a good story, it doesn't matter if the character is male or female or whatever. If the story is good, it will work. If
it feels genuine to the whole, continuity. For instance, if it was Green Lantern and he suddenly was unworthy of the ring, and a female took the ring and became Green Lantern, that makes sense.
Yeah,
because that's what it is. Green Lantern is a mantle that and that's not what Thor is, despite whatever they want to say about it. I think people just call bullshit and don't believe it. But despite all that, the story was really good, and it's just that one thing bothered me. So
yeah, so I'm gonna say yes to that as well. The fact that it worked was contributed in part the way Brubaker was writing Winter Soldier. Jason Aaron is an exceptionally good writer. Like I've enjoyed Jason Aaron's work quite a lot. It could have gone off the rails, but Jason Aaron did a good job. However, as you said, Darren, Thor is somebody's name, right? It's not She-Thor. It was literally Thor. And the controversy, similar to the Peter Parker being really not Peter Parker, but really Ben Reilly, who we have been watching all along, it in some ways said, oh, whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, okay, he, she, not a big deal.
Right.
Possess the power of Thor. Fine. Was it because they were dating that she was worthy? I mean, it just seemed like such a, with Ironheart, it wasn't like one of Tony's ex-girlfriends. It wasn't like, oh yeah, it's going to be Tony's ex-girlfriend who, she had worn the costume for sure. Pepper Potts has worn the costume, but it wasn't because the worthy thing. I think what rankled people was this, which is, other people could not pick up the hammer. And in 23 of the Marvel movies, we saw nobody could pick up the hammer. But in the last movie, Captain America proves himself worthy and the crowd goes nuts. It's supposed to be an exceedingly rare thing. They almost took this exceedingly rare, very special moment and just turned it into not anybody, but it just didn't resonate with truth.
Yeah, I think there was a whole time there where they felt like anybody could be a hero, which is why they made so many spider people heroes. Seriously, and it's why that it turns out a hero isn't special; it's something that anyone can be, kind of thing. And it was just like a whole kind of thing, and to me that wasn't really the problem, because I can believe that Jane, she knew she was terminally ill with cancer. She was pure of heart or whatever, and so it worked for whatever contrived reason that they wanted to put in there. So that worked. It wasn't like there was a dozen people holding the hammer. To me, it's like she wasn't any different than Beta Ray Bill in that she got the power, she held the hammer, but Beta Ray Bill never called himself Thor.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where it kind of annoyed me.
All right, so Mike Fasolo, you were doing Research-a-Palooza. What did you learn from your Research-a-Palooza?
Well, this was another one that really got fans annoyed. I mean, they said the story did well. It was pretty good, but like Darren was mentioning, it was the mantle part that really got people annoyed, because you're now calling Jane Foster Thor when there's no reason for that. She could have, chosen any name. She could have just been, the like he said, Super Jane or Jane of the Hammer. It could have been anything. The giving her the name Thor kind of annoyed people, because now what's Thor when he's not?
He's the Odin son. That's
when he's not using his powers.
If Hercules lost his powers, would Zeus make his girlfriend and powerful and call her Hercules?
Or not her Hercules, but Hercules.
Yeah.
I see what you did there. Yeah. Darren, look at Darren. That's it.
I'm embarrassed. I said that.
There you go. There you go. You got off a dad joke.
Because Jane was terminally ill, and she kept, whenever she had the hammer, she had all the powers, and all the chemotherapy and stuff was erased from her body.
Mhm.
So whenever then she went back to being Jane, she was weaker and even closer to death. Why wouldn't she just stay Thor? Didn't seem, and I didn't read the story again. I just read the stuff online, but it didn't seem like there was any reason why she couldn't just stay Thor and be fine for, thousands of years.
Because she eventually, if she came back, she wouldn't exist. I think it made her more heroic that every time she turned into Thor, she knew she was going to come back and be even closer to death. But why wouldn't she stay Thor? I don't honestly remember.
You could just stay Thor and just still be just Super Jane. Like, just,
it was like She-Hulk. She-Hulk was like, I'm going to stay She-Hulk. I like it. And that was the choice. But, really at the end of the day, guys, I think that, there's a very fine line between stories working and not working. And it's, as you as a creator or pitching an editor, Darren, you were an editor at Marvel for a long time. People probably pitched you the craziest ideas. And it's a razor thin difference that I would imagine gets you to think about a story or reject it. What do you say, Darren? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, I feel like some of the craziest stories that were pitched to me were by you.
I was going to say I was your biggest fan, but I think it's the fan over your left shoulder is your biggest fan. There you go.
Another dad joke. All right.
Dad joke time.
Yeah, I think as an editor, you kind of know what works for your character as far as tone, and when you hear something that's just way out there, you have to fight the urge to just say no. You got to think about it. Well, why am I thinking no? Is it because it's bad, or is it because that's not what I was thinking? But I think in a lot of cases, if they trust the writer, they'll let them go with it, and sometimes it backfires. So I feel like editors back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, I think had more power to tell a writer that wasn't a good idea. But now you got writers like Brian Bendis and who basically don't listen to anything an editor says, and if you give them a note, then you're questioning them. So and a lot of editors are intimidated by that because they might not be 25 and this is like they've only been there for a year. How are you going to question a guy like Brian Bendis? You're not, so there's a lot of give and take. You got to trust your writers and the senior editors. They're the ones who eventually make the calls. And
I think the key thing, and Mike, I'd like you to weigh in on this as well. I think the key thing is following the truth line of the history of what has come before and respecting that, and then pulling that through and making it make sense. When there is a decision that a character makes that does not make sense or does not resonate with what we have experienced for 30, 40 years, it begins to make people, I think it's off-putting. And you can almost pull anything off, but you can only pull it off if it makes sense and has truth to the core of the character and the previous story. So it's like art, in order to break the rules, you have to know the rules first. And sometimes rules are broken, and it's not going to work. Now, this is not true for you if you're a creator of your own independent property, but if you are endeavoring to write for Marvel, write for DC, Image, or any of the other publishers or the publishers with licensed properties, you still have to be true to the core of that character. Mike, what are your thoughts? And you're a TV writer, so you can feel free to talk about how you write to other mediums as well.
Like we were saying before, the main thing has to be a good, solid story that makes sense. Like if you go back to that Mephisto one, that doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to do any of that. They could have found an easy way to make it a good story. And when you just take that away, you just kind of throw something together. The fans who have followed these characters for so many years are going to be pissed, because you're taking what they know and what they want to read, and just going, oh, none of that matters. We're just doing it this way from now on. And it's not good. It kind of, spits in the fans' faces saying, oh, it doesn't matter what they think. We're just doing it this way.
I think you want to create jumping on points for fans. You don't want to create jumping off points.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what they inadvertently do. So
I agree. I think that's a great point. For me as a reader, a lot of these things become jumping off points. Although I will admit, I did pick up the Jane Foster Thor, read a few issues, liked it. But after a while, you can't afford to buy all these books. Something's got to give. And I kind of had the feeling that Jane Foster Thor wasn't going to stick around forever. So I just stayed with the core books. Mike,
totally
is this a
agree.
new person?
This is someone new that we don't know.
John, welcome to the show. Mike, you want to read out Drawn Swords?
Characters' powers as mantles work best when it's part of the lore, like the Lanterns or Jedis. Yes, exactly.
Right, exactly. And that's what you have to do. So you do have to find, as I said, a throughput, something that has truth to it that makes it make sense. And then you could make a twist against that as long as it pulls through.
Yeah.
And I think
it can't feel like convoluted soap opera stuff, because that's when fans just they kind of check out. And once it starts doing that, then you got to rein it in and make it a little bit more cohesive and
got to have a crisis.
Yeah,
Right.
and let's just have our disclaimer statement. Some people really enjoy these. We did enjoy some of the stories. It's not a slam. The topic of the show is really about something that created a controversy. And did it sell more books? Like you said, Mike, sometimes that's the name of the game. Selling more
it
books.
sold more books at first.
Yeah.
Clone Wars, or not Clone Wars, but the Clone
Saga.
Saga. Yes. And also the artists for the Clone Saga, they say that the fans at conventions that the Scarlet Spider is the most requested character that they have to draw. So fans do still like elements of that storyline.
Yeah.
Well, and people like when we end the show on time, and we will tonight, guys. Once again, Darren, thank you for joining us. We are always thrilled to see you.
My pleasure.
You're a delight to have on the show. I believe we are going to twist your arm, Darren, and teach us about what custom publishing in comics is all about. Something that can be for certain creators very, very profitable, something that I've done for you, and so has Mike. So we'll have you back on. Jared, thank you for joining. Thank you all for contributing. We will see you again next week, as we see you every week. We love to see you guys. We'll see you next Tuesday, 8 p.m., same time. Please click like, leave a comment, share the show with a friend, and we will see you next week. Thanks again. Thanks for coming on.